This is going to be a quick video of importing a file from Adobe Illustrator. So it's .ai is the format, straight into VCarve. All the vectors are there, sizing it appropriately, and then sending just the toolpathing information is all we have to do in VCarve. And that's the power of using a program like VCarve Pro. We can use all kinds of other files, DXFs, SVGs, EPS. I mean, there's any PDFs, JPEGs. There's any number of different file formats. We don't really care. If it comes as a vector, it's better because the scaling and sizing works better. But if it comes as a JPEG or a typical graphics file or a screen capture, as long as you can do recognition on those graphics files, and then it will create the vectors, and then you can scale it and not lose clarity. So you want to have it come in at the highest resolution that you can. But in the case of an AI file, it's coming in ready to go. So let's get a look at it. Okay, so here we are in VCarve Pro. We're going to create a new file. My material size, I don't know what I'm going to do. Let's say it's 24 by 48 and 3/4 of an inch thick. Offset 0, and I'm going to orient it to the bottom left-hand corner of my material when I put it on the table. And I'm going to touch off on the material surface, and I'll tell it OK. Then I want to open up the file, and this was emailed to me as a .ai file. I've already done the drawing because I've already cut it. But this is how it came out. There is another video on the cutting process of it, but this is the video as it comes in. And these are all vector lines. So if I touch one, it is continuous, and because it came from Adobe, it's in good shape. There's not a whole lot of editing if I zoom in that I need to do. There's really nothing that I need to do. They cut this on a plasma cutter, is my understanding. It may have been for a decorative tag or something. I'm not sure. But all I'm going to do is grab it and move it using the arrow keys. So I did a grab box from left to right, and anything that I have totally captured, anything that I have totally captured in that grab box will be all moved together. So rather than grabbing this and then holding on the shift key and getting this, if I do a grab box from left to right, anything that I capture all the way will be in there. So let's look at what I'm going to capture that I have all the way captured. It was just these two different parts because I had a box, but it was not capturing all of those 3 lines, but it did get those 2. Now, if we go the other way, if we go from right to left, anything that it's touching will be selected. So even though I don't have all of any of these vectors, anything it's touching, it will grab. So that's a real quick way to grab different parts and send them, either for toolpathing or whatever you want to do. So if I'm going to leave this oriented this way, I need to do a wider piece of material, or I can scale the whole thing down. If I want to scale the whole thing down to fit, and I have a certain 20-inch wide, and I want to make this 18 inches, I can set the size. Right now it's 24 inches, and I want it to be 18 inches wide, and have it scale appropriately. That'll make it 13.4, and there we are. So we're ready to go. I'm going to undo that by doing Control-Z, but I'll make my material wider because I do want to cut it at the original scale. So I'm going to make this 27 inches wide. And I don't need a full block. I'll just do it 30 inches tall. And I'll capture everything and tell it to center it in the material. Okay, so that all looks good. Those are the vectors that came in straight from Adobe. Don't have to do anything to them. So I'm going to go straight to the toolpathing side. In this case, we decided we're going to cut out this profile. We're going to kind of engrave these and engrave the OCC and engrave chopper and the date. So I'm just going to grab all of this that it totally covers, and all of this. And holding down the shift key, I say I'm selecting these to unselect them. And really, I should unselect these circles. I guess these were holes that were cut through for either the license plate bracket or whatever. I'm not sure. But I don't need to do anything with them. So basically, what we're going to do is I'm going to do a pocketing command on this. But because of the size, this is awful small between here. I can't get everything in there. So I'm going to remove all the tools in here, and I'm going to go through the whole process. So let's say I wanted to look at it a couple different ways. I'm going to first hog it out with a 1/4 inch tool. And then I may do another tool. So if we back out, and I want it to ramp in, and I'll come back. I always come back and look at all my individual options here. So if we did that, well, it can't do everything because it can't get into the gaps. That's all. That's the only bit that it would be able to get with the 1/4 inch tool. So we need to go with a smaller tool so that we can get into the finer detail lines. So I will go back in to this operation by double clicking on it, and I will add an additional smaller tool. So I could do, well, with an 1/8 inch tool, or I could go straight to an engraving bit. We'll let it go with this. Of course, we would ramp it in and tell it to do it. And then it creates two different tool paths. The bigger one and then the smaller tool. And we're getting much closer to having the look that we want, but it's still not getting everything. There's single lines up here, and there's detail lines down here that we're not getting. So we've missed this vertical line right here. It's not showing up. So we need an even smaller tool. So we're going to go back into those operations, and we're going to select yet another tool. And we're going to go with a 30-degree V-bit, which is what I actually cut it with. So I've got that programmed at 150 inches per minute, drop rate of 30 inches. And this is just going to be a very small bit, just getting in these tight corners. So it would make this vertical line and add it to this work that it's doing. But basically, it would take the 1/4 inch bit, and it would probably work from here to here. Can't get into the smaller area. After I do, it does all the 1/4 inch bit work, then it'll come back in with the 1/8 inch bit and go a little closer to the tips of this C. And then it'll take the engraving bit and bring it right into the edges of this C and drop down this line and add this line, that's missing right now. This line here is missing because it can't get into it. But with this engraving bit, 30-degree engraving bit, it'll let it happen. So I'll reset the preview, and there we are. So now we have the detail with the font, the way the font was intended to work. But if we look down here on the date, we're not going to be real impressed with that. So we're going to play with that a bit, and I can do a couple different options on this. So I'm going to unselect that date. I'm going to double click on it, and these are the operations that I'm going to work on, but I'm going to work on the date totally separate. So I'm going to unselect it, and I Control Z. I inadvertently unselected everything. So I'm going to get this and this, unselect this, this, and this, and get county, unselect this, 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 holding down the shift key and just left selecting with the mouse. So that's got everything that I want to do that work with on the first cut. I'm just going to probably use two tools. We'll look at the time, but I might as well use the same tools. I know I'm going to have the same issues with these thin lines here, so I'm just going to draw a box across here and get everything, and then add this, and draw a box, and draw a box, and select. So basically, we're going to have it just pocket everything out. And I'll pocket it. Let me zoom in. I'll pocket it first, and then we want to paint it with two different colors. So that looks good. We'll have it recalculate everything. And again, I'll come back in and look at these ramp commands and things like that. So it's calculating here at the bottom, showing a lot of work. And I didn't want to pocket this area. So I don't want it. If we look at this, it's pocketing the whole. It's a good look, but it's not what I was planning to do. I mean, that would be a great look if I was doing it and leaving it on the full piece of material. What I'm going to do is use this vector as a border cut and cut this out loose. So in what I grabbed, if I go back into it, double click on it, I'm just going to unselect the border, and then have it recalculate, and then it will do the pocketing within each of these shapes rather than leaving the letters proud. If I was doing a carve away technique, there we are right there. But I'm not. I'm going to do an engraving technique. So I'll tell it to calculate again. It works it up, reset the preview, and then preview all. And there we have it. Again, I'm going to unselect it, get these dots out, and then I'm going to treat the date absolutely separate from everything else. So I'm going to go back into the operation by double-clicking on it. Click, click. And I'm going to zoom in, hold down the Shift key, and while everything else is selected, unselect the two dots and tell it to calculate. I'll refresh, reset the preview, and then preview all. And there we have everything looking good. I've somehow moved it, so I'm going to grab everything and I'm going to use the arrow keys because we're going to cut it out. And that'll fix it here. Go back to the preview, reset the preview. I also need to recalculate the tool paths. So I'll just hit the recalculate button. It does everything. And then I'll reset the view and preview all. And there we are. Okay, so now we have to deal with the date. And the date was very small that even the 30-degree engraving bit was not having a lot of fun getting in some of those areas. So what I can do is I'm going to set up a new tool path as a pocket. And I'm going to take these out. I don't need them. I'm just going to use the V bit. But I'm going to change the depth. This is going to be sprayed. I'm going to engrave this. And what happened was it couldn't use the edge of this line and the edge of this line and get 1/8 of an inch deep into some of these shallow areas. So I'm going to do 0.0625. I'll change it to a 1/16 and see how it does there if I pocket date and calculate that. That looks good. It's everywhere in there. So I'll preview all. Boom, and there we have. So it's got the date in there. So that's all we need to do. Well, we need to do the border cut. So we're going to come back in, and if I look at the time on this, it's showing roughly 48 minutes. Again, this is never absolutely correct because VCarve can't take into account how quick the machine accelerates and decelerates and things like that. But this gives us an idea of the total machining time. And as it ends up on this job, it was actually very accurate. But I've got 7 minutes and 30 seconds, and then I have to do a tool change, and then I have to do another tool change. I may look at it another way and just say, okay, tell you what if I don't do this first? What if I only have 2 tool changes? I let it hog out with the 1/8 inch bit. Let's see what that does. And it still is going to get everything. It's going to be the exact same finished product. But if we look at our time, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Let's check this again. Double click, turn off all tool paths. It's got everything being pocketed. That would be the second pass with the engraving bit. This would be the engraving bit. And as I hover on top of it, it pops up. So that's the engraving bit. So that's just two tools. I am not sure why it came up with less time, but I'm okay with that. One less tool change. I just don't have to pay attention to the machine. The 1/8 inch bit, so we're going to look at the feeds and speeds on it now and say this is going to be it. And then I will do a tool change back because I can cut the border cut with a 1/4 inch bit. Now I can do that. There's a couple different ways. Again, this is your cutting strategy. I could, if I do tabs on it, which is how I cut it, I could do the 1/4 inch bit for hogging out and do the border cut with tabs, because after that it's just going to be doing light work because of the 1/8 inch bit in making the pockets closer to the edges of the vectors, and then coming back in again, very light work with the 30-degree engraving bit. So my 1/8 inch bit doesn't have a long enough cutting area to cut this material out. And you'll see that I ended up surfacing the slab. The mahogany was 1 1/8 inches thick originally, and in the video where I did it, It had a cup in it and a bow, both. And so I ended up surfacing it on the top side with a 19 millimeter insert cutter just to surface it and then recut everything. So I've got that. I'm going to do a border cut on this vector on the outside of it with what bit? I'll use an 8 millimeter. That's what I had chucked up in the bit, or I can switch to a 1/4 inch bit. It really doesn't matter. I'll just do a 1/4 inch end mill at 100 inches or 150 inches per minute. That's fine. I don't care. And that will be 5 passes if I was at the 1 1/8. But what we're thinking of is, I think this material that I have set up is, I had set it only at a 1/4 inch. I'm going to leave this but come right back to it. So I'll tell it to go ahead and calculate the profile of the cutout. And it was my material thickness I had specified when I opened up this job to do online with you guys as only 3/4 of an inch. But the last time I used this tool, I did a 1.145 because I was cutting thicker mahogany. So I can either change my material type to be thicker, or I can change this to a material thickness M plus 0.020 equals. So material thickness plus M or T plus 0.020 equal. Okay, I didn't look at the typing, but I probably boogered the typing. So it took the thickness of the material as specified on the design end plus 20 thousandths, so it's 0.77, all good, 3 passes, let it go, and calculate. And I'm going to want to add ramps to it, and I'm going to want to add tabs. And I can edit the tabs, and what I do is I try to put tabs where I can get to them easily to cut them, and where I can get the oscillating tool in. That's what I use to cut them from the material here when they're on the table. So I'm just specifying where I'm going to do it, and then I can cut them off with a flush trim bit in a hand router. So that looks good, all good, and we'll calculate. And it gives me the warning, hey, I'm 20 thousandths deeper than my material, so I'll be into the spoil board, and that's fine. It is a spoil board. Reset the preview, and then preview all. I'll slow it down. I'll speed it up. And there we have it. That is ready to go. It's got the tabs. I am ready to cut that thing out. At this point, we save the tool paths, and if we hover on top, I've got an 1/8 inch bit, a 30-degree V bit, a 30-degree V bit, and then the profile cutout was with a 1/4 inch bit. So that is ready to go to the machine. I can save the tool paths. So what I do is I select the first one, and the way I do my naming conventions, I say save that tool path, and there's nothing selected here. So I'm going to select this, and that's an 1/8 inch bit. That's good. I'll tell it to save it, and it shows me what I'm cutting here. I'm going to save the tool path. I'm going to save it to a file. I'm going to start from this directory, so I edited the video a little bit because I don't like to show customer names necessarily. So I'm going to do a new folder and just call it OCC. And then the first one will be the way I name it. I'd put a 1 there and then a space, and then this is a 0.125 end mill, and then I'll just let its name follow. So this is the first tool. It's a 0.125, an 1/8 inch end mill, and it's going to be pocketing. And then I'm going to take this one, which is a 30-degree V bit, and this one, which is also the same 30-degree V bit, and I'll combine those. I don't have to save them individually, so I can save that. And this would be the second tool, and it's 30-degree. And this is pocketing and engraving date. So it's pocketing everything else and then engraving the date. And again, if I move this out of the way, I can see it. I just have to zoom in on it so I can see it, but I know it is. And then I'll turn those off. And I'll slide down a little bit, and this is the profile cutout, and I'll save that tool path. This will be my third tool, and this is a profile cutout. And this will be using a 0.25 end mill. Okay, and then if I open up this again, I can see I didn't name this properly. I mistyped it. So I'm going to click on the name and just come over here and put that as a 2. So the first tool is a 0.125 end mill, and it's going to be doing some pocketing. The second tool is a 30-degree V-bit. It's going to be used for pocketing and engraving the date. And the third tool is a 0.25 end mill for doing the profile cutout with tabs. And that's it. I'm ready to send this to the machine. You can either use FileZilla, you can use a USB stick, or you can use our new Smart Transfer app that's built into our console, and you can install it onto your PC. So that's it. Taking a job from Adobe Illustrator right in, use the vectors as they came in. They're good and solid. And then just assign toolpathing to those vectors and cut it out. The other video, I'll put a link in the description, but it was just cutting it out, and I sprayed the center section with, I sprayed this area with white paint, and this area, the Orange County choppers and the date with orange paint, and then just did a mineral oil finish on top of it. It's a good looking project, very quick and very simple. When you get files that are already basically vectors, all we do is toolpath them in VCarve. And that's it. Yeah, it's a very simple process. Probably to take that job in and toolpath it if I wasn't talking would be 4, 5, 6 minutes, complete to the machine, ready to cut. When you get a job that's coming in as vectors already, it's scalable. There's a lot of benefit to it. If you have to use the tracing function that's built into VCarve Pro, that's great. But sometimes it's easier to just redraw it on top of the graphic and then use the node mode to adjust your lines. Sometimes we try to really recreate the wheel and make it easier by using some of the automated functions that really don't necessarily give us as good a quality as we could do if we just drew the images and manipulated stuff. Other times, based on the image quality, the tracing mode works great. So, but coming in as vectors, it's wonderful. It comes right into the machine, and we just assign toolpathing and off we go. So if I can help you in any way, I do online demos that should be specific to your needs, and I do training here in the shop as well as on site as well. So if I can help you in any way, demos are always welcome to be here at the shop. When people come, it's very rare that they don't call back by the time they get home or the next morning. Go, yeah, I'm ready, Eric. You showed me that the machine does everything that you said it would do, and that it's time. Let's get a SmartBench headed their way. So if I can help you in any way, give me a shout. 205-871-6618, or my email contact is there. It's sales@YetiSmartBench.com. Thanks.